The screen is absolute black. Silence. Then, a sound emerges. Not from the speakers, but felt in the bones. A deep, subsonic tremor. It grows, clarifying into the squeal of metal on metal, the grinding clatter of endless tracks. It is the sound of the earth being skinned alive. The blackness is ripped apart by a hellish orange flicker. Archival footage, but not of grand tank columns. We are in the mud. A low, soldier's eye view. A Soviet trench, a gash in the earth. Young faces, smeared with dirt and soot, are pressed against the frozen soil. Their eyes are wide, uncomprehending. They are not looking at tanks. They are looking at a wall of sound and iron. A German Panzer IV fills the frame, not as a vehicle, but as a geography. It is a moving cliff of painted steel, mud spraying from its tracks like black blood. It passes mere feet from the trench. The ground shakes. Clumps of earth fall from the trench wall onto a soldier's back. He does not brush it off. He is paralyzed. The tank ignores them. It is a force of nature, and dinosaur. It lumbers past, its machine gun silent, its contempt absolute. Its target is somewhere beyond, in the heartland. The scene fractures into a sensory assault. A field hospital in a bombed-out barn. The camera does not flinch. It is not about the blood, but about the smell. You can almost taste the coppery tang of it, layered over the sweet, nauseating reek of gangrene and disinfectant. A surgeon, his apron a map of crimson, works with a hacksaw on a shapeless mass of meat and uniform. A boy, no older than 18, stares at the ceiling, biting on a leather strap, his eyes dry and utterly empty. A command bunker. The air is thick with the acrid smoke of cheap tobacco and the sour odor of human fear. A colonel, his face a mask of exhaustion, listens to a report. The numbers are read in a monotone. 3rd Battalion encircled. Anti-tank regiment destroyed. No artillery support available. They are requesting any means to stop the breakthrough. The colonel's hand, resting on the map, trembles slightly. He does not look at his officers. He stares at the pushpins marking the German advance, as if trying to vaporize them with his will. He needs a miracle, or a sacrifice. Cut. Sudden, jarring silence. Birdsong. We are at Central School for Military Dog Breeding, a grand name for a collection of muddy pens and wooden barracks. Autumn sun filters through tall pines. The air smells of wet earth, pine needles, and dog. Here we find our man, Ivan Miroshnikov, 58, former head trainer for the Moscow Circus. His specialty was the carnival of clever canines. A man who spoke to animals not with commands, but with whispers and the promise of delight. His hands, now calloused from army work, still move with a precise, gentle economy. He is cleaning a kennel, not a duty for his rank, but a ritual. A large mixed-breed shepherd, named Alma after his daughter, leans against his leg. He scrubs the concrete, his movements methodical. This is his peace. The peace is shattered by the roar of an engine. A motorcycle with a sidecar skids to a halt outside the main office. A young lieutenant, his uniform improbably clean, strides inside. Minutes later, the head of the school, a career officer with no love for dogs, storms out. His face is pale, not with fear, but with a kind of grim excitement. He barks Ivan's name. In the office, the lieutenant lays a schematic on the desk. It is crude, hand-drawn. It shows a dog. On its back is a crude saddlebag. From it, 2 wooden boxes. A lever sticks up, like a perverted antenna. The State Defense Committee has approved the concept, the lieutenant says, his voice crisp. Anti-tank dogs. Mobile, low-cost mine delivery systems. The school commander nods vigorously. We can train them. Simple conditioning. Food under the tank hull. They run. They dive. The lever detonates the charge. One dog, one tank. The lieutenant's eyes fall on Ivan. You are the expert. How quickly can you establish the reflex? Ivan stares at the drawing. He does not see a weapon. He sees the mechanics of betrayal, the lever, the charge, the inevitable consequence for the creature triggering it. His mind, trained in behavioral cause and effect, runs the sequence to its brutal, logical end. It is possible, Ivan hears himself say, his voice hollow. But the variables on a battlefield, sound, smell, vibration. The variables are not your concern, Comrade Miroshnikov, the commander interrupts. Your concern is the reflex. Create it. Use every animal. Priority 1. The men leave Ivan with the schematic. The paper feels unclean. He walks back to the kennels, the diagram crumpling in his fist. The dogs greet him, barking, tails whipping the air. Alma pushes her wet nose into his palm. His gaze sweeps over them. Dozens of intelligent, trusting faces. Dogs who could find wounded men in smoke, carry messages through shell fire, detect mines. Dogs of life, and he is to remake them into single-use weapons of death. A perversion of every bond he has ever built. Later, in the deepening twilight, Ivan sits on the steps of his barracks. Alma lies at his feet, her head on his boot. In his hand, he holds not the schematic, but a small, worn photograph. A young woman smiling, her arms around a younger, happier Ivan, his daughter, killed in the first Luftwaffe bombing raid on Moscow, while he was on tour with the circus. He looks from the photo to Alma, who looks up at him with bottomless, dark eyes. He thinks of the trembling colonel in the bunker, of the empty-eyed boy in the field hospital, of the wall of steel that ignored the men in the trench. He thinks of his daughter, buried under rubble. A terrible, silent calculus is performed in his soul, the life of a dog, against the potential to halt that steel beast, to avenge 1,000,000 daughters, to save the next boy in the trench. It is not a decision made from military logic. It is a Faustian bargain made from grief. He stands up abruptly. Alma rises alert, ready for a command, for a game. Ivan's face is a stone. He walks to the storage shed. He returns with a simple leather harness, a canvas satchel, and 2 blocks of wood, roughly the weight of the explosives. His movements are no longer those of a gentle trainer, but of an engineer assembling a terrible machine. He kneels before Alma. She wags her tail uncertainly as he straps the harness to her body, tightening the buckles with a finality that makes his stomach clench. He attaches the dummy charge, the wooden lever protruding absurdly from her back. He takes a piece of black bread from his pocket, her favorite reward. He does not give it to her. Instead, he walks to the rusty, immobilized tank hull used for familiarization. He kneels, places the bread deep in the shadow beneath its cold, steel belly. He returns to Alma, points to the tank, gives the command he has used 1,000 times for simple retrieval. Alma, fetch. The dog, eager to please, trots towards the hulking mass of metal. She hesitates for a moment at the dark space underneath, her animal instinct wary of the confinement, the strange smells of oil and rust. But the scent of the bread and the voice of her master urge her on. She ducks her head and crawls into the darkness. Ivan Miroshnikov does not watch. He stands rigid, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun has bled out. He listens to the scrabble of her paws on the steel plates underneath the tank. He is not training a dog. He is rehearsing a murder. His own heart becomes the countdown timer, and he has just pressed start. The chapter begins not with a sunrise, but with the metallic clang of a lock being opened. The training ground is now a laboratory of cruel pragmatism. The pastoral silence of the kennel is gone, replaced by a harsh, regimented rhythm. The camera observes from a cold, detached distance, like a scientist watching an experiment. Even Miroshnikov moves through his days as a ghost in his own life. His gentle coaxing has been replaced by a rigid, mechanical routine. The bond with the animals is still there, but it has been weaponized. It is the very trust they have in him that he must now exploit. We see the process. A line of dogs in their harnesses, the dummy charges strapped to their backs. Their tails are low, their posture uncertain. The wooden lever is an alien limb they cannot shake off. The core of the training is a brutal simplification of nature. A hungry dog. Food placed only under the tank hull. The tank, a dormant steel beast on blocks, its engine off. The dogs are held on long leashes by young soldiers, boys themselves who avoid looking into the animal's eyes. Ivan gives a whistle, the soldiers release the leads, and the dogs sprint towards the silent tank, diving into the dark space beneath to find their reward. At first, it is chaos. Some dogs balk, circling the tank, whining. Others run past it, confused. A few lie down, refusing to move under the weight of the harness. Ivan corrects, coaxes, repeats. He withholds food for failure. He rewards only the precise behavior. A fast, direct crawl underneath the belly of the vehicle. He becomes a master of negative reinforcement. We see him orchestrate a symphony of aversions. Soldiers, hidden, beat on sheets of metal to simulate gunfire. The noise is terrifying, but the only safe space, the only route to food, is under the tank. The message is branded into the dog's primal brains. The world is loud and dangerous. Under the tank is quiet and safe. It is a complete, diabolical reversal of reality. The focus narrows to Alma. Her training is different. It is personal. Ivan works with her alone at dusk. He does not shout. He whispers. His commands are gentle, but their intent is not. He has perfected her conditioning. She is now the star pupil, the model for the entire program. She runs the drill with a swift, chilling efficiency. Hunger, whistle, run, dive, retrieve. Her eyes, however, have changed. The joyful spark is gone, replaced by a focused, driven intensity. She no longer wags her tail after completing the task. She simply looks at Ivan, waiting for the next command. The connection between them is now a stark circuit. Master and instrument. One afternoon, a new element is introduced. A gasoline engine is mounted on a stand behind the training tank. On Ivan's signal, a mechanic pulls a cord. The engine coughs, sputters, then roars to life, belching smoke and heat. The dogs in the pen flee to the far corner, barking in terror. Alma, on her leash, flinches violently, trying to retreat. Ivan holds her firm. He does not soothe her. He walks her, step by resisting step, closer to the roaring, vibrating machine. He makes her sit 10 feet from it, the exhaust washing over her, the noise filling her skull. He forces her to endure it. Then, he places a piece of meat under the silent, adjacent tank hull. He releases her. The conflict in her is agonizing to watch. The terror of the noise versus the drilled-in command and the promise of food. For a long moment, she is paralyzed. Then, the conditioning wins. She darts in a low, terrified crouch past the roaring engine and into the sanctuary under the dormant tank. Ivan does not celebrate. He watches her cower under the steel, chewing the meat with frantic, nervous gulps. He has just simulated the battlefield. He has taught her to run towards the very source of her fear. This is the breakthrough. This is what the command wants. He feels a cold void open inside him. That evening, the school commander arrives with the young lieutenant for a demonstration. A real, functioning T-34, its engine idling with a low growl, has been brought to the field. This is no longer theory. A dog, not Alma, is selected. It is a nervous, brindled male. The dummy charge is strapped on. The soldiers take their positions. The commander nods, a tight smile on his lips. Ivan gives the whistle. The dog is released. It hesitates, its ears flattened against the noise and vibration of the living tank. It takes a few stumbling steps forward, then veers away, trying to flee back to the kennels. A soldier blocks its path, waving his arms. The dog panics, running in a wide, desperate circle around the perimeter of the field, the stupid wooden lever bouncing on its back. "Useless," the commander snarls. "The animal is defective." The lieutenant's face is impassive. Again, with a different subject. Ivan's jaw tightens. He knows the order before it is given. He turns and walks slowly to the kennel where Alma waits. She is already standing, alert, as if she has been expecting this. He kneels, checking her harness for the 10th time. His hands linger on her fur around the straps, feeling the rapid beat of her heart. He looks into her eyes. He sees the conditioning, the readiness. He also sees, or imagines he sees, a remnant of the old trust, a silent question. He leads her out into the field. The commander and lieutenant watch, skeptical. Ivan positions her. The idling T-34 is a monster of heat and sound 20 meters away. He gives no whistle. He simply makes a small, sharp gesture with his hand. Alma explodes into motion. She is a blur of focused purpose. She does not run in a straight line, but in a low, zigzagging dash, an instinctual maneuver against imagined gunfire. Her body is close to the earth, her movements efficient and terrifyingly fast. She does not hesitate at the tank's tracks. She slides underneath the roaring machine in one fluid motion, disappearing into the shadow between the grinding wheels. Silence, except for the tank's engine. 5 seconds. 10. Then she scrabbles out from the other side, emerging without the piece of meat Ivan had secretly placed. She had not retrieved it. She had completed the drill as taught. Go under. She sits, looking back at the tank, then at Ivan, awaiting her reward for a job perfectly done. The commander claps his hands together, a single, loud crack. "Excellent. You see, Lieutenant, perfect. This is the model. This dog and this trainer are the blueprint. Scale this up, immediately." The lieutenant makes a note on his clipboard. He looks at Alma with the appraising eye of an engineer viewing a successful prototype. The reflex is established. The animal is viable. They turn and walk away, already discussing logistics, numbers, shipment to frontline units. Ivan is left standing alone in the field. Alma trots back to him, finally allowing herself a slight wag of her tail, expecting praise. The tank's engine cuts off, leaving a ringing silence. Ivan stares at the spot where she vanished under the hull. He sees not a successful test, but a premonition. He sees the zigzag run across a real field churned by shells, not training turf. He sees not the dummy lever, but the real one, connected to 10 pounds of TNT. He sees the slide under the moving enemy tank, not the stationary friendly one. He sees the perfect obedient reflex triggering not a reward, but a flash of light, a noise louder than any engine, and then nothing. He has not just trained a dog, he has programmed a perfect, living missile. And in her eyes, looking up at him for a treat, he sees the absolute, unforgivable cost of his bargain. The weaponization is complete. The factory is now ready for mass production. And the first perfect weapon is named Alma, and she loves him. The chapter begins with the screech of train wheels on cold iron. A long, filthy freight train sits hissing on a siding deep in a winter forest. Its cargo not shells or soldiers, but dogs. The efficient machine of the training school has been running at a brutal pace for weeks. The montage is swift, cold, and dehumanizing. Dogs are processed on an assembly line of betrayal. They are weighed, their size and health logged not for care, but for payload calculation. Harnesses are mass-produced from cheap canvas and rough leather, issued like standard uniforms. The dummy charges are replaced with real ones, long, ominous, canvas-wrapped packages of TNT, fitted with the now familiar deadly lever. Ivan Miroshnikov is now a foreman in this factory of sacrifice. He moves between the pens and the loading area, his face a closed mask. He no longer trains personally. He oversees young harried soldiers who drill the dogs with a clumsy, impatient brutality. The subtlety, the careful conditioning, is gone. It is now a crude, industrialized imprinting. Hunger, tank, run. The failures are called, not put down, but sent to other, less glamorous duties. Only the most blindly obedient or the most desperately food-motivated pass. The focus sharpens on the loading of the train. The dogs are led up creaking ramps into darkened boxcars. The air inside is thick with the smell of fear, wet fur, and animal waste. Soldiers slam the heavy doors shut, plunging the animals into near darkness, the only light coming from narrow slats near the roof. The sound of confused whining and barking echoes from within the steel walls. Alma is in a separate crate near Ivan's makeshift office car. She is not part of the shipment. She is the master template, too valuable to risk. Ivan watches from a distance as the school commander, bundled in a greatcoat, conducts the final inventory with the receiving officer from the front. The two men stand over a clipboard, their breath fogging in the freezing air. 120 units, fully conditioned, the commander states, his voice carrying across the platform. Units, the front officer repeats, nodding. He glances towards the boxcars with the pragmatic look of a man receiving a shipment of grenades. Delivery and deployment protocols are enclosed. The first operational use is scheduled for the Stalingrad sector. The word Stalingrad hangs in the frosty air, like a death sentence. The train lurches forward with a violent clash of couplings. It begins to move, slowly at first, then gathering speed, carrying its living cargo southwest towards the epicenter of the inferno. Ivan watches it disappear into the gray twilight, the mournful sound of its whistle blending with the fading barks from the boxcars. Weeks pass in a tense, sickening vacuum. Reports trickle back, not to Ivan, but to the commander. He intercepts them, reading the dry military jargon in the cold privacy of his quarters. The messages are fragments, but they paint a damning picture. First deployment, 112th Rifle Division. K-9 units panicked under artillery barrage. Several detonated in assembly area. Friendly casualties. Deployment near Kalak. Dogs released. Majority refused to approach enemy armor, turned and sought shelter in Soviet trenches, resulting in catastrophic losses. Division commander forbids further use. A grainy, torn photograph is paper-clipped to one report. It shows a muddy trench. In the foreground, a young Soviet soldier lies dead, his body broken not by German shell, but by a close-quarters explosion. The scorched remains of a harness are visible nearby. The school commander rages at the failures, blaming cowardly handlers and incorrect battlefield application. He orders the training to be intensified, the hunger periods lengthened. Ivan listens to the tirades in silence. He sees the reports. He understands the truth his experiment ignored. He had solved for one variable, the dog's reflex, in a sterile lab. The battlefield held 1,000 others. The cacophony of 100 engines, the smell of cordite and death, the concussive hell of incoming shells, the sight of men running and screaming, the fundamental overriding instinct of a frightened animal to seek solace with its handler, not charge towards a roaring metal behemoth. The final report arrives in a sealed packet. It is thicker. Ivan finds the commander's office empty, the damning document on the desk. He reads it. It is an after-action analysis from the Stalingrad front. A single, successful deployment is described in chilling technical detail. The dogs were released against a probing attack by German Panzer IIIs. Of 40 dogs, 37 were cut down by coordinated machine gun fire from the tanks and supporting infantry before reaching halfway. 2 were killed by Soviet defensive fire trying to flee back to their lines. 1 reached a tank. The report notes, Unit 73 achieved physical contact with target. Detonation confirmed. Enemy track disabled. Tank immobilized. Crew eliminated. It lists this as a tactical success. Then, the next paragraph, in the same dry tone. Post-detonation analysis and prisoner interrogation confirm enemy adaptation. German infantry units have received specific orders to prioritize canine targets over infantry. Tank crews are instructed to use hull-mounted machine guns against canine units as primary protocol. The element of surprise is considered lost. Ivan does not read about a victory. He reads an obituary. He reads that the Germans, the ultimate pragmatists, have seen his weapon, analyzed it, and filed it under tactical nuisance to be efficiently eliminated. They have turned his dogs from a terror weapon into priority target practice. The reflex he so carefully built now does only one thing. It guides the dogs into a pre-sighted kill zone. He looks up from the report. Outside the window he sees the training ground. A new batch of dogs, younger, more skittish, is being run through the crude drills. They are chasing the old lie. Food under the tank, safety under the tank. He sees the blind, mechanistic repetition of a failed formula. In that moment, Ivan Miroshnikov, the brilliant conditioner, understands the fundamental flaw. He hadn't created a weapon to destroy tanks. He had created a system for the mass production of canine suicide, a tragedy so predictable that the enemy had already written the counter-manual. The equation was broken. The result was not tank kills, but a brutal, wasteful slaughter of the very creatures whose trust he had spent a lifetime earning. The bargain he made in his grief had yielded not vengeance, but an assembly line for futile sanctioned murder. And the bill, written in scorched earth and animal terror, was now coming due. The chapter does not begin with Ivan or with dogs. It begins with a single stark sound, in absolute darkness, the crisp metallic clack of a MG-34 machine gun's feed tray being locked open. Light bleeds in, gray and cold. We are inside a German defensive position on the outskirts of a shattered village somewhere in the vast, frozen expanse of the Soviet front. The world is a monochrome of white snow, black trees, and the dirty gray of rubble. Our eyes adjust to the point of view of a young German soldier. G. Enter. He is 19, a former forestry apprentice from Bavaria. His hands, numb in thin gloves, methodically feed a 250-round belt into the machine gun. His movements are practiced, automatic. His face is not that of a fanatic, but of a weary, deeply frightened boy, trying to remember the steps of a drill to keep the paralyzing terror at bay. He shares the frozen dugout with an older, grim-faced corporal named Bauer, who scans the dead field ahead through battered binoculars. The silence is oppressive, broken only by the moan of the wind and the distant, thunderous grumble of the front, miles away. This is a quiet sector. Too quiet. Bauer lowers his binoculars, his breath a cloud of vapor. Something's off. Listen. Ganter strains. Beyond the wind, he hears it. A strange, high-pitched, frantic barking, carried in fits and starts on the icy air. It is not the sound of stray dogs. It is a chorus of distress, confusion, and terror. Russian dogs, Genter mutters, confused. Bauer's face hardens. He reaches into his coat and pulls out a crumpled mimeographed sheet, passing it to Genter. It is a tactical bulletin. At the top, a rough sketch. A dog with a strange protrusion on its back. The heading? Achtung, Minenhunde, Sprengstoff Tiarger. Warning, mine dogs, explosives carriers. The text is blunt. Soviet anti-tank tactic. Dogs carry shaped charges. Target, tank underbellies. Engagement protocol. All canine units approaching the line are to be engaged with maximum priority with small arms and machine gun fire. They are mobile explosives. Do not allow proximity. G-Enter reads it twice, the absurdity of it wrestling with the cold, official language. A dog. A bomb. He looks from the paper to the empty, snow-churned field, then back to his machine gun. Suddenly, a different sound cuts the air. Not barking. The deep, guttural roar of Soviet KV-1 tank engines from the tree line opposite. Battle stations are called along the German line. G-Enter's heart hammers against his ribs. This is it, the armor assault. But the tanks do not advance. They hold position, their guns silent. Instead, from hidden trenches and blinds, figures emerge. Soviet soldiers, not charging, but releasing leashes, shoving animals forward, then ducking back down. Dozens of dogs spill out onto the snowfield. They are not a coordinated wave, but a chaotic, scattering mass. The harnesses are visible, the ominous levers bouncing. Some sprint forward with a desperate, trained energy. Others immediately try to turn back, only to be driven forward by shouts and noise from behind. Many simply mill in confused circles, terrified by the tank roars from their own lines and the vast, open killing ground ahead. For 3 long seconds, the entire German line is frozen in disbelief. It is a surreal, almost medieval spectacle. Bauer snaps the spell. Minenhunde! Alle Waffen! Fewer! His scream is raw with a new kind of fear. The German line erupts. The sound is not the disciplined staccato of aimed fire at infantry. It is a frenzied, panicked cacophony. Rifle shots crack. Submachine guns rip long, unaimed bursts. And G-Enter, his mind white with the bulletin's warning, mobile explosives, squeezes the trigger of the MG-34. The world narrows to his gun sights. The panoramic horror collapses into a single magnified vignette of carnage. Through the shuddering optic, he is not shooting at soldiers, but at animals. He sees a large shepherd mix, running in a zigzag, its tongue lolling. His tracers stitch a line across the snow, then find their mark. The dog is flung sideways, a red spray misting the white, its body tumbling, the charge on its back sliding harmlessly away. G-Enter does not feel triumph. He feels a sickening lurch in his gut. He has just shot a dog. He traverses the gun. Another target. A smaller dog, cowering, trying to dig into a shell crater. The order screams in his head. Maximum priority. He fires a short burst. The dog jerks and goes still. He sees a handler in a distant Soviet trench stand up, screaming something unheard, his face a mask of anguish, before being pulled down by a comrade. Ginter becomes a machine. His humanity is compartmentalized, locked away behind the urgent, simple math of survival. Dog equals bomb. Bomb must be destroyed. He mows down a bounding terrier mix. He cuts the legs out from under a fleeing hound. The snowfield, pristine moments before, is now a grotesque canvas of dark, spreading stains and still, furry forms. The levers on their backs look like ridiculous, pathetic sticks. One dog breaks through. It is fast, incredibly fast, its body low. It weaves through the slaughter, a survivor. It is heading not for a tank, the German panzers are farther back, but straight for G-Enter's own machine gun nest. A direct threat. A mobile bomb coming for him. Bauer is firing his rifle beside him round after round. He misses. The dog is 50 meters away. 30. G-Enter sees its eyes, wide with a primal terror that has overwritten all its conditioning. He sees the grimy harness, the lethal lever. He screams, a raw, incoherent sound, and holds the trigger down. The long burst catches the animal at 20 meters, almost lifting it off the ground. It collapses in a heap, skidding forward in the snow, coming to a stop just 10 meters from their position. The lever on its charge is snapped off. It lies there, not exploding, just a broken dead thing. The firing along the line slowly sputters out. The barking has stopped. An eerie, ringing silence returns, now heavy with the smell of cordite and a new, coppery scent. The field is littered with dark shapes. Not one has reached the German tanks. The Soviet tanks, their experiment failed, withdraw back into the tree line with a grinding rumble. G-Enter's fingers are locked around the trigger. His body is shaking violently. He stares at the dog he killed last, so close he can see the steam rising from its torn body into the cold air. Bauer slumps back, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands, muttering, Wer? Wer? Russen! Crazy, crazy Russians. But G-Enter doesn't hear him. He is not thinking about the Russians. He is staring at his own hands. He just participated in a massacre, not of men, but of manipulated, terrified animals. He followed an order that made tactical sense, but in doing so, he has crossed a line he didn't know was there. He didn't fight soldiers today. He was a pest controller in a hellscape of someone else's making. The victory is absolute, and it feels more hollow and filthy than any defeat. The view from the sights has shown him a new, profoundly unsettling face of war, and his own reflection in it is that of a boy who just machine-gunned a pack of dogs to save himself from a fantasy of exploding animals. The absurdity and the horror are inseparable, and they have frozen something inside him forever. The chapter does not return to the front, nor to the German machine gun nest. It opens in a profound, bureaucratic silence. We are in Moscow, in a nondescript government office building far from the sound of artillery. The room is high-ceilinged, lit by a single green-shaded lamp on a vast, polished desk. The walls are lined not with maps of battlefields, but with graphs and production charts. This is the realm of numbers, not blood. A man, we'll call him the auditor, sits at the desk. He is middle-aged, precise, his uniform impeccable, but devoid of any frontline grime. He is not a soldier. He is an accountant for the war machine. Before him are two stacks of folders. One is thin, neatly aligned. The other is thick, disheveled, spilling photographs and handwritten field reports. The thin stack bears a label: Operational Successes, K9 Anti-Tank Units, Confirmed Tank Kills. He opens it. There are perhaps 10 to 15 reports inside. Each is a carbon copy of a dry clinical narrative. On such and such date, near such and such village, a K9 unit detonated its charge against a German Panzer III/4, resulting in immobilization and crew loss. Some have grainy, almost meaningless photographs of a disabled tank from a distance. There is no context, no mention of cost. The auditor makes a neat tick on a separate ledger next to a number, a hypothetical tally of enemy steel destroyed. He pushes that stack aside. It slides easily across the smooth wood. He pulls the thick, chaotic stack towards him. This folder has no tidy label. It is a compilation of everything else. The first layer is casualty reports, handler, and infantry. Dozens of pages. Not from enemy action, but from friendly incidents. Dogs, panicked by shelling, bolting back into their own trenches. The trembling handlers unable to stop them. The lever snagging on a log or a soldier's equipment. The descriptions are brief, sanitized, but the subtext screams: Explosion in Trench Sector 5, 3 killed, 8 wounded. Cause: deployed K9 unit, returned under stress. The auditor's pen moves to a different column in his ledger, adding not to the enemy's toll, but to their own. The next layer is veterinary and logistics reports. Lists of dogs shipped. Lists of dogs dead in transit from stress, disease, or cold. Lists of dogs deemed unfit for purpose upon arrival at the front. Animals driven insane by the journey, refusing to eat, catatonic with fear. The cost of their transport, their food, their harnesses, their explosives. The numbers are not large in the scale of total war, but they are starkly, unequivocally negative, a net drain. Then the photographs. These are not distant shots of tanks. These are close-up, brutal, uncensored images from field surgeons and burial details. They are not for public consumption. They show the consequences of the failures. A Soviet soldier, his body horrifically torn not by a German grenade, but by the sympathetic detonation of a charge from a dog that sought refuge near him. The scorched, twisted remains of a harness amid the carnage. Another photo. A line of dead dogs in a snowy field, picked off by machine gun fire like in Ganter's sector, their bodies stiff, the snow around them brown and red. The efficiency of the German countermeasure, captured in grim tableau. Finally, the field assessments, handwritten, often by frustrated, angry junior commanders. The language is less formal, more raw. The dogs are useless. They are a danger to my own men. The Germans simply shoot them. It is a waste of good explosives and demoralizes the troops who have to deal with them. Request permission to disband K9 anti-tank platoon and reassign handlers to mine-clearing or casualty retrieval duties. These animals could be of use. This is not a use, it is a slaughter. The men call it the running minefield. They fear the dogs more than the German mortars. The auditor sits back. The green lamp casts deep shadows on his impassive face. He is not moved by pity. He is assessing an equation. On one side of the ledger, a hypothetical, minuscule number of disabled tanks, many of which could have been recovered and repaired by the Germans. On the other side, a concrete, catalogued list of costs. The waste of specialized explosives, the loss of trained handlers and infantry to friendly incidents, the colossal expenditure of time, resources, and transport on a program with a near-zero success rate, the profound, intangible cost to unit morale, the confirmed documented adaptation of the enemy, which has turned the weapon into a predictable, easily neutralized tactic. He takes a fresh sheet of paper. He writes a heading. Recommendation for the State Defense Committee. Re-evaluation of anti-tank canine program. His writing is swift, definitive. He does not write of cruelty or ethics. He writes of inefficiency. He writes of negative return on investment. He writes of tactical obsolescence. He concludes that the program, in its current offensive form, is a net liability to the war effort. He recommends immediate cessation of frontline deployments and the exploration of alternative applications for the military dog units. He signs the document with a flourish, blots the ink, and places it in an out tray. It is done. The fate of thousands of animals and men has been sealed not by a general's epiphany, but by an accountant's cold calculus. The scene holds on the two stacks of paper. The thin stack of successes looks pathetic, insignificant next to the towering pile of documented failure and cost. The auditor turns off the green lamp, plunging the room into darkness, leaving the ledgers and the photographs as ghosts in the gloom. The message is clear. In the machinery of total war, sentiment is irrelevant. But even the machinery cannot tolerate a gear that grinds itself to dust while producing nothing. The program is not being canceled because it is cruel. It is being canceled because it is, in the coldest terms, bad business. And in this war, bad business gets you sent to the Siberian fronts or erased from the production schedule. The tragic, bloody experiment has been audited, and the balance sheet is written in red. The directive from Moscow arrives not with a bang, but with the rustle of bureaucratic paper. It is a cold, antiseptic end to a hot, bloody failure. At the training school, the change is not announced with speeches or shame. It is implemented with the same mechanical efficiency that once built the program. The orders are clear. Cease all conditioning for anti-tank duties. Retrain viable animals for auxiliary functions. The school commander reads the orders, his face a stone mask of a man whose career has just dead-ended. He barks the new instructions and retreats to his office, a man made obsolete by his own brief, disastrous success. The true weight of the directive falls on Ivan Miroshnikov. He is summoned and handed the paper. He reads the clinical language of termination. There is no mention of the dead dogs, the shattered handlers, the German machine gunners, the auditor's ledger. It simply states the program is no longer tactically viable. The war has moved on. Ivan is to oversee the transition. He walks out onto the training ground, the order crumpled in his fist. The sight that greets him is a surreal inversion of his life's work for the past year. The stationary tank hulls, once the central altars of the conditioning ritual, are being towed away by tractors, dragged off to be scrapped or returned to mechanic units. In their place, soldiers are laying out new, strange apparatus, low-crawl nets, mock-ups of rubble and trenches, stretches of open ground marked with white flags. And there are the dogs, the same animals, the survivors. They watch the removal of the tanks with a confused tension. Their bodies are still strapped in the familiar hated harnesses, but now the lethal levers have been snapped off, the explosive compartments empty. They are ghosts wearing the shells of their former purpose. Ivan's first task is the unmaking of his own creation. He begins with Alma. He leads her to the center of the now empty field. She looks at him, then at the space where the tank used to be, her posture a coiled spring of conditioned expectation. Hunger, tank, run. The algorithm is etched in her nerves. Ivan holds not food, but a simple leather leash. He clips it to her harness. He gives a gentle tug, signaling her to walk with him. She resists. She looks at the empty space, then back at him, whining softly. Her entire being is focused on the absent stimulus. The ritual is broken, and her world has lost its axis. For days it is a battle of gentle, persistent erosion. Ivan works with each dog, but Alma is his penance. He must systematically dismantle the reflex he burned into her soul. He leads her on long, meandering walks, rewarding her for simple companionship, for ignoring the empty field. He feeds her from his hand in a calm, quiet shed, severing the link between food and the steel monster. The real challenge comes with the new training. The first auxiliary function, casualty retrieval. A young soldier playing wounded lies groaning in a foxhole. Ivan brings Alma to the edge. Her old conditioning screams, "Avoid open ground. Seek cover. Find the quiet space." The soldier's moans confuse her. Ivan coaxes, points, uses a new command. He must teach her that a human in distress is now the target, not something to avoid. He must replace the drive to destroy with the impulse to save. The paradox is exquisite in its cruelty. The second function, mind detection. Here the very sensitivity that made her wary of the battlefield is retooled. He walks her on a long lead across a field where training mines, empty casings, are buried. She must learn to stop, to sit, to indicate, not to charge. She must use her fear, her acute senses, as a tool of preservation, not a trigger for self-annihilation. Watching her freeze, her body rigid, her nose quivering over a buried object, then looking to him for guidance instead of bolting, is a profound and heartbreaking victory. The most difficult unlearning is her response to loud noises. A backfire from a truck sends her into a primal panic, scrambling to find the nearest dark enclosed space, the ghost of the tank's underbelly. Ivan must patiently, over weeks, desensitize her, pairing the sounds with calm and safety, teaching her that noise no longer predicts the only path to food or survival. We see the physical transformation mirror the psychological one. The generic weaponized harnesses are taken away. In their place, the dogs are fitted with distinct, functional gear. Broad, comfortable saddles, with Red Cross insignia for the medics, lighter harnesses with metal rings for message carriers. Alma receives a simple, dignified collar with a brass plate. The instruments of death are replaced with the tools of service. The climax of the chapter is not a training success, but a quiet moment of failure that signifies a deeper truth. Ivan stages a final test. He has a tractor run its engine loudly at the edge of the field. He then sends Alma on a simulated message run across the open ground. The old, roaring monster is back. Alma takes the message tube and runs. The engine noise rises. Halfway across, she falters. Her gait breaks. She slows, her head turning toward the sound, a lifetime of conditioned terror flashing in her eyes. She stops altogether, crouching low, the message forgotten. For a terrifying second, Ivan sees the old program ready to execute. The zigzag, the desperate dash for the source of the noise. But it does not happen. Instead, Alma whimpers. She looks from the roaring tractor to Ivan, who stands far across the field. Then, she does something entirely new, something she was never conditioned to do. She turns her back on the noise, on the false tank, and she runs, not in a tactical zigzag, but in a straight, desperate sprint, for the one constant in her shattered world: him. She crashes into his legs, dropping the message tube, pressing her whole body against him, trembling. Ivan sinks to his knees in the mud. He doesn't care about the dropped message. He wraps his arms around the trembling animal. She did not run to the tank. She did not complete the old mission. She overcame it. She chose him over the program. In this failure of the drill, he witnesses the first, fragile return of the individual creature he had once erased. The weapon is gone. What is left is a wounded, traumatized, but living being capable of a choice. The unlearning is not complete. The scars will remain forever. But the reclamation has begun. The ledger of the auditor may have closed the account, but here, in the mud, a different kind of balance is being painfully, tenderly restored. One dog at a time. The chapter opens on a sound that has become synonymous with the Eastern Front, the relentless, earth-shaking thunder of the Soviet artillery barrage before a major offensive. But this time, we are not in a trench awaiting the charge. We are behind the lines, in a forward medical post carved into the frozen mud of a ravaged forest. The air is thick with a different kind of tension, not the sharp fear of combat, but the dense, grim pressure of impending carnage. Orderlies prepare stacks of bandages, boil instruments over smoky fires, and stare with hollow eyes at the empty stretchers lined up like grim invitations. The barrage is their curtain raiser. They know what comes after the music stops. Among them is Ivan. He is no longer a trainer in a rear area school. He has volunteered with Alma for frontline medical service. It is not an act of heroism, but of atonement. He wears a simple medic's armband over a worn uniform. Alma beside him is almost unrecognizable. The last vestiges of the weapon's harness are gone. She wears a sturdy, well-fitted saddlebag, marked with bold red crosses. Her demeanor is focused, calm, a stark contrast to the twitching anxiety of her operational days. She watches Ivan's face, reading his micro-expressions, waiting for a signal. This is their new partnership. The barrage lifts. The silence that follows is more terrifying than the noise. Then, the distant, crackling choir of small arms fire begins, and soon after, the first sounds they are waiting for. The raw, human screams for medic, sanitar. The first wave of wounded arrives, carried by comrades, or stumbling through the trees. Men ripped apart by the machinery of war. The medical post erupts into controlled chaos. Ivan moves to a soldier with a ghastly leg wound, applying a tourniquet. But another cry comes from a shell crater, just 30 meters outside the relative safety of the tree line. A dangerous, exposed no-man's land under sporadic sniper fire. Ivan looks at Alma. He slips a rolled bandage and a small flask of morphine into the pouch on her side. He points to the crater, gives a soft, firm command. He does not send her to a tank. He sends her to a dying boy. Alma hesitates for only a second, her ears flattening against the distant cracks of rifle fire. Then she moves. She does not run in a straight, suicidal line. She uses the terrain, dodging behind shattered stumps, sliding into hollows, her body low and fluid. It is the zigzag pattern Ivan once drilled into her for survival, now employed for its true purpose, to preserve life. She reaches the crater and vanishes into it. Ivan, his heart a cold knot, continues his work on the soldier before him, his ears straining. Seconds stretch. Then Alma's head reappears. She scrambers out and sprints back, the same tactical run, arriving at his side. The bandage and morphine are gone. In their place, tucked into the pouch, is a blood-smeared dog tag and a folded note from the wounded man's comrade. Message delivered. Hope delivered. This is the new pattern. As the battle rages, Alma becomes a phantom, a low, swift shadow darting through the deadly spaces between the lines. She carries plasma to an advanced dressing station when a runner is hit. She returns leading a dazed, bleeding soldier by the sleeve of his greatcoat, the man clinging to her harness as to a lifeline. She locates a wounded mortar man in a thicket by his scent, staying with him, licking his face to keep him conscious until Ivan can fight his way there. We see her in a sequence of vignettes, a living antithesis to her former existence. Then, a charge strapped to her back, designed to explode on contact with steel. Now, a medical pouch on her back, delivering salvation to flesh. Then, trained to seek the roar of engines. Now, finding the moans of men in the silence after the explosions. Then, a target for every German machine gunner. Now, an elusive, low-profile lifeline, ignored by enemy sights focused on human combatants. The climax of the chapter occurs as a German mortar finds the range of the medical post. A blast of dirt, smoke, and splinters. Ivan is thrown against a tree, his head ringing. Through the disorientation and the screams, he sees chaos. The chief surgeon is down. A supply tent is burning. And he sees Alma, not fleeing in terror, but standing over a wounded orderly who had been kind to her, barking sharply, persistently, into the confusion. A signal, a beacon. Ivan stumbles to them. The orderly has a shrapnel wound in his thigh. Ivan works quickly, Alma pressed close beside him, a solid, warm presence in the madness. As he finishes, a young lieutenant, his face blackened, grabs Ivan's arm. There's a signals team cut off in the gully west of here. Their wire is dead. They have coordinates for a German battery. We need to get the message to Battalion HQ now. The runners, they're all dead or pinned down. He looks from the lieutenant's desperate face to Alma. The ultimate repurposing. The messenger role. The most dangerous run yet across open ground swept by fire. Ivan takes the folded map coordinates. He puts them in her pouch. He holds her head in his hands, looking into her eyes. There is no conditioning here, no blind reflex. There is only trust, hard-won back from the brink of betrayal. He points in the direction of the battalion command dugout, a kilometer away, through hell. He gives the command. Alma looks where he points. She looks back at him. She takes a deep scent of the air, acrid with smoke and cordite. And then she runs. This time, the camera follows her. We see the battlefield from a foot off the ground. The world is a storm of noise and vibration. Mud explodes near her from impacting shells. Tracers zip through the air overhead. She weaves, she drops, she crawls, she sprints. She uses the corpse of a horse for cover. She swims through a creek, the cold water shocking her into greater clarity. Every skill, every ounce of survival instinct that had been perverted for a suicidal goal is now honed for the purpose of delivery, of connection. She reaches the command dugout, a hole in the earth surrounded by radio antennas. A startled guard sees her, recognizes the medical harness. She scrambers down the muddy steps, into the crowded, smoky underground post. She goes directly to the harried battalion commander, sitting on a crate, and nudges his hand with her nose. The commander, astonished, takes the coordinates from her pouch. He reads them, barks them to his radio operator. A minute later, the deep thump of Soviet counter-battery fire begins, silencing the German mortars. Alma does not wait for praise. She turns and, exhausted, begins the journey back. Back to Ivan. Back to her duty. Back to the true service she was always meant for. She is no longer a weapon to be expended. She is a partner to be returned to. In the crucible of the real war, the grotesque experiment has been purified into something simple, noble, and devastatingly effective. The dog that was built to destroy tanks has, in the end, saved dozens of lives and helped silence the guns. The tragic fallacy has finally found its redemption, not in a grand gesture, but in the mud, under fire, one perilous mission at a time. The war ends not with the chapter's start, but as a vast, echoing absence. The relentless thunder that has scored every frame for years has ceased, leaving a physical silence that feels like pressure on the eardrums. It is the spring of 1945. The air, for the first time, carries the scent of thawing earth and budding leaves without the constant undertone of cordite and decay. We find Ivan Miroshnikov in a place of unsettling peace. It is a military dog kennel, but not the one from which the terrible program was launched. This is a quiet, almost pastoral facility for decommissioning and reassigning war animals. The frantic energy of training is gone. The dogs here are veterans, their eyes holding depths no civilian pet could fathom. Some are missing limbs, others startle at loud noises. Many simply sleep with a profound exhaustion. Alma lies at Ivan's feet in a sun-dappled patch of grass outside his small office. She is old now, her muzzle gone gray, her movements stiff with arthritis and old injuries, a shrapnel scar along her flank, a limp from a wound sustained on one of her messenger runs. Her eyes, half closed in the warmth, follow the slow flight of a butterfly. She is the last of them, the final living artifact of the experiment. Ivan is packing a small weathered suitcase. The war is over. His service is done. His papers process his discharge, and with a special dispensation, the grant of custody for one retired military working dog, medical and messenger service, citations attached. But before he can leave, a visitor arrives. It is not a military official. He is a young man in a simple suit, an artist, or a low-level functionary from a city planning committee. He carries a portfolio. He has been sent, he explains awkwardly, because a monument is to be erected. In a park, in a city that saw fierce fighting. A monument to the heroic army animals with a special plaque for the anti-tank dogs. They want Ivan's input. They need to know what it should look like. The young man opens his portfolio, revealing grandiose, heroic sketches. In one, a stylized, muscular German shepherd, its body leaning forward in a dynamic sprint, a stylized charge on its back leaps heroically under the tracks of a generic tank. It is clean, bold, symbolic. It speaks of sacrifice and calculated bravery. It is a lie. Ivan looks at the sketches for a long, silent minute. He looks from the heroic dog on paper to Alma, who has painfully pushed herself to her feet and come to lean against his leg, her head heavy on his thigh. He sees her gray muzzle, her cloudy eyes, the scars that tell a different story. He does not give input. Instead, he tells the young man to follow him. He leads him out of the administrative building, not to a monument site, but to the edge of the training grounds, now overgrown with wild spring grass. He stops at a forgotten rusty piece of metal half swallowed by the earth. A lever, the triggering lever from one of the original charges, discarded years ago. He picks it up, the cold iron rough in his hand. Then he begins to walk. He walks past the old, crumbling foundations where the tank hulls once stood. He walks across the field, where dogs learn to run toward death. He walks to the kennel block, now quiet. He does not speak. He simply shows. He points to a deep gouge in a wooden post, the mark of a panicked dog's chain, worn over months of confinement. He shows the young man a dusty storage shed. Inside, piled in a corner, are a few dozen decaying, empty harnesses, the canvas rotten, the leather stiff, the metal buckles rusted into grim shapes. They look not like instruments of war, but like relics of torture. Finally, he stops before Alma. He kneels with difficulty, his own body stiff with age and memory. He does not pose her. He simply rests a hand on her head. The young man, confused, raises his camera, thinking this is the moment. Ivan shakes his head sharply. Not a photo for a monument, for memory. He speaks, his voice a low rasp. He does not talk of heroism or tactical necessity. He talks of fear. He describes the specific milky terror in a dog's eyes when the tank engine first roared. He describes the sound of 100 animals whining in a dark boxcar. He recounts the field reports of dogs shot like pests in the snow, and the worse reports of dogs exploding among their own men. He talks about the long, painful process of teaching a creature to unlearn its own suicide. He speaks of Alma's first successful medical run, not as a triumph, but as a relief so profound it brought him to tears. The young man listens, his earlier bureaucratic enthusiasm draining away, replaced by a dawning, uncomfortable comprehension. The clean narrative of sacrifice cracks, revealing the complex, ugly, tragic reality beneath. Ivan stands. He hands the young man the rusty iron lever. "That is your monument," he says. "Put that on a pedestal, and next to it, put a medical saddlebag with a red cross, and explain why they are together." The young man holds the lever. It feels heavy, morally heavy. He looks at the heroic sketches in his portfolio, now seeming grotesque and naive. He nods, slowly, not in agreement to a plan, but in understanding. He packs his things and leaves, the lever wrapped in cloth, a burden he did not expect to carry. Ivan is alone again with Alma. His suitcase is packed. It is time to go home, to a home he hasn't seen in years, to a life he cannot imagine. He attaches a simple leash to Alma's collar. He picks up his suitcase. Together they walk out of the kennel gates for the last time. They do not look back at the training fields, at the shadows of the past. They walk down a long, dusty road lined with young birch trees, their new leaves trembling in the spring breeze. The camera stays on them, a long shot. 2 old soldiers, 1 man, 1 dog, moving away from the institution of war, carrying the weight of it in their bones and their memories. There is no fanfare, no heroic music, only the sound of the wind, the crunch of gravel underfoot, and the slow, syncopated rhythm of their steps, one slightly halting from arthritis, the other stiff with age and scars, moving in imperfect unison towards an uncertain peace. They diminish into the distance, not as heroes of a myth, but as survivors of a truth. The monument is not in a park. The monument is the 2 of them walking away, the living, breathing, scarred testament to a chapter of history that should be remembered not for its false glory, but for its tragic cost, and for the fragile, hard-won redemption found not in destruction, but in the stubborn, quiet act of moving forward, one step at a time, away from the roar of the guns, into the silent, complicated aftermath. The screen fades not to black, but to the quiet, enduring gray of the road ahead.